Hello everyone, it's Run the NBA back here for another off-season preview video. And today we're going to be talking about the New York Knicks and how they could look to improve the summer off of what was a surprising but positively surprising season in New York. An emergence of Julius Randle as a legit all-star, a big improvement in the play of RJ Barrett, along with the good acquisition of Derrick Rose amongst other things. But this is a team that has nearly half of their roster entering free agency this summer. There's a real desire to add a point guard to this team, if not more. So it's going to be a very pivotal offseason for the Knicks, where they have Randle and RJ Barrett under contract, but a lot of the rest of the roster is in question. And they do have to look forward to some extensions or re-signings of some key players very soon in the near future. And so obviously, as I mentioned, this was a New York Knicks team that had a very good, surprising season last year. They ended up in the 4 seed, I believe, ahead of the Atlanta Hawks, if I'm not mistaken. And they, of course, ended up losing in the first round. Disappointing, you can say, sure. But at the end of the day, this New York Knicks team was expected to be nowhere near 41-31 as the number 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. And so the fact that they played as well as they did and had such a positive season, had such a jump in their growth and development as a team, is something that really has to be looked at as a positive. Tom Thibodeau did really well as a new head coach and instilled a very good defensive mentality in what became one of the best defensive teams in the league, which I don't think anyone would have expected out of the Knicks. Not that the personnel on this team lended themselves to be a bottom 5 defense in the league, but no one probably would have thought that they were going to be one of the best ones, especially in the first half of the season, and still very solid in the back half. But we're going to talk here now about their free agents for this upcoming summer. Briefly, I just do want to mention the fact that they could be fairly active as far as trades go on draft night, or if not, they're going to acquire a nice plethora of talent. They have the 19th, 21st, 32nd, and 58th overall picks. So they have 3 picks within the top 32. So they're going to have a lot of options if they want to trade up. Or if not, they just have 3 picks in the first 32, which is going to allow them the chance to potentially add more young talent to this team. Either way, they're in a great spot for potential draft picks in this year's draft. But as far as free agents go, they have Derrick Rose, Frank Ntilikina, Alex Burks, Alfred Payton, Nerlens Noel, Reggie Bullock, Taj Gibson, and Theo Pinson, all as free agents this summer. Now, of course, not all of those are valuable pieces to this team. None of the core guys are free agents this summer. But Derrick Rose, you could argue, was a core guy, was probably their most consistent perimeter scoring threat in the postseason. He's a free agent. And Frank Ntilikina, I don't think Tom Thibodeau wants him back. He didn't really play much last year. You can probably comfortably say at this point that he just is a bust, unfortunately. And that's just the way it is. He'll probably be picked up by someone, and someone will take a chance on him as a backup guard and see what they can do, specifically one of the weaker teams in the league. But I think his time in New York is done. I'm sure they'll be interested in trying to retain Alex Burks. Of course, he was someone who was a good guy for them off the bench last year alongside Emmanuel Quickley, who gave them a nice little scoring punch and was able to provide some much-needed perimeter scoring and shot creation off of the bench. Nerlens Noel is going to be someone that's going to be hard to retain because he's one of the best centers on a very thin free agency market this summer. After Rashawn Holmes, he's arguably the next best center in the free agency market for the center position. And given the fact that Mitch Robinson is up off of his contract in a year's time, they could start thinking this summer about whether they genuinely want to keep Mitch Robinson, depending on what the price they're going to have to give him and his injury concerns. And maybe they lock Noel up to a multi-year deal and they want to move on from Mitch Robinson. And so that's something they have to consider this summer as well. Alfred Payton's also a free agent. I wouldn't be shocked to see him walk, especially if they re-sign Derrick Rose. They are hoping to keep Derrick Rose as the 6th man and acquire someone else to be the starting point guard. And so in which case, Alfred Payton is really redundant, and I would not expect him to remain on the team long term. If that is the case, Reggie Bullock was a key member for this team as well last year, played a lot of the small forward position. He is on the older side, but he is still only 30. He could offer some more valuable minutes off the bench for this team at the small forward or shooting guard position. But the hope is for the Knicks is that they can add another piece in that type of wing spot so that Reggie Bullock does not have to be a starter for them next season. It's not the end of the world if he is, but I know there's an ideal scenario where they've been talking about someone like Kelly Oubre for a reason, and it's because they want to move Reggie Bullock to the bench or not have to bring him back, period, so they can improve that small forward spot in the starting lineup, because Kevin Knox has proven not to be that guy. Taj Gibson was valuable for them off the bench as well last year, but I don't think it's a necessity that they bring him back. They'll just be looking for someone to be the backup four. It doesn't have to be Taj Gibson. So that's what they're looking at for free agents this summer. Derrick Rose, of course, being the most critical. I think he's going to be very important for their playmaking and shot creation and making ability next season. He averaged nearly 15 points a game last year, and there was points in time last year, specifically later in the season in the playoffs, where without him, their offense just would have been nothing. As far as a playmaking standpoint or as a shot creation standpoint, he was really the engine that made it tick. And he's going to be very valuable for this team again next year, and so they're going to work hard to bring him back, and I know that's something that Derrick Rose is also interested in, so it should be something that both parties can agree to without too much trouble. Moving on, though, I want to talk about Julius Randle before I start talking about some of the potential trades they could be looking to and be interested in this summer. Julius Randle only has one more year left on his contract, and this was a contract that was, when signed at the start of it a couple of years ago, looked like it was probably going to be an overpay and someone who's probably going to get bought out in this last year of his deal, which is now this upcoming season, which is non-guaranteed. Well, now it's looking like a steal of a deal. He's getting paid $19.8 million next year to be someone who's a borderline All-NBA caliber guy. Of course, he did have a disappointing playoff run, but it's his first time in the playoffs. He was the number one guy, and he's probably not the number one guy in the top-end team, if we're being honest with ourselves. But he had an absolutely brilliant season, a much improved season, improved a lot as a playmaker, his decision-making, his three-point shooting all drastically improved. And he's put the work in, obviously. He's recovered from his injury that he devastatingly got very early on in his rookie season, 7 or 8 games in, and he's turned himself into a very good NBA player. And so the Knicks are going to have to consider re-signing him heavily, I'm sure, as if the Knicks continue to improve and have a good season again this season. Then Julius Randle would have great interest in returning. The Knicks are just going to have to decide if they want to pay him the max or near max they're going to have to pay him to re-sign him. They have lots of money to spend next summer. That's not an issue. They have $24 million in committed cap space for that summer. Now that currently only leaves RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, Vildoza quickly, and Norvel Pell under contract, so of course they are going to have much more in committed salaries than that, but they have a lot of wiggle room to play with. They have a lot of cap space to play with, and so bringing him back is not going to be an issue. And I would expect that he will re-sign with the New York Knicks throughout this season or next summer. That being said, the most interesting thing for the Knicks this offseason is going to be who they add to this team that isn't an impending free agent currently on the team. Because a point guard has been something that Tom Thibodeau wants very badly. Tom Thibodeau likes his vets, and he wants a veteran point guard, although they also have been mentioned in some Colin Sexton rumors. So look for them to be involved in some Colin Sexton talks. Look for them to be involved in Kyle Lowry talks. Although, again, Lowry's probably most likely to go to Philly or Miami, but expect them to be involved. And the Pelicans also seem to be involved in that front now, which I'll be discussing in another video later today or tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. But Kyle Lowry they'll be in talks about. Lonzo Ball is someone they will definitely be interested in. Depending on what happens in Chicago, Kobe White could be someone they inquire in, although I think he's less likely to be traded than anyone else. And then you also have some of the free agents names like potentially Mike Conley, although he's likely to stay in Utah, potentially Goran Dragic, potentially someone like Spencer Dinwiddie. There are a lot of options that the Knicks could try and look into for the point guard position in this offseason, and that's going to be priority number one for the Knicks this summer, outside of retaining the guys that they want to keep. Number two has to be the fact that they do want to upgrade their small forward position, and they don't want Reggie Bullock to have to be their starting small forward next season. And rightfully so. Reggie Bullock is a fine player, but at this point in time in his career, he's probably best served as a guy off the bench who can be more of a role player for you than someone you need to count on for 30-plus minutes a night. He offers you some fine defense, some good spacing, can shoot the three at a decent rate, but he's not an ideal starter for you for a team that is looking to move the needle forward a bit more this season in the New York Knicks. And so someone that's been talked about, of course, is someone like Kelly Oubre. They'll be looking at several options, but that is going to be and has to be, in my opinion, priority number two for the Knicks this summer. Get a point guard, try and get a small forward, retain who you want to retain, extend Julius Randle, or they can just wait. Either or. Within the next 8 to 12 months, extending Julius Randle needs to be a priority. And then they also need to decide what they want to do with Nerlens Noel and Mitch Robinson, neither of which are elite centers, but they might not want to keep both and have one be a backup. And so they also are going to have to think about a bit this summer what they want to do with Mitch Robinson eligible for an extension and Nerlens Noel being a free agent. With that being said, this is a team with a lot of upside, a lot of cap space. I think the ceiling is very bright for them. Of course, Kevin Knox has been a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is now for him. He's probably someone that gets looked to move on from after his contract expires this year. But hopefully they can get some more out of Obi Toppin this year, more out of Emmanuel Quickly, more out of Mitch Robinson if he can stay healthy. And RJ Barrett can hopefully in year 3 continue to improve even more. And there's a lot of upside for this New York Knicks roster. If they can make the right moves this summer, they can definitely look to be a top playoff team in the East again next season. Will they get top 4 again? Maybe not. But I think they can probably be a top 6 seed if they do make the right moves this summer. There's no doubt about that. I think the upside is bright. The win now scenario was not now for the Knicks. This is just part of the process to getting their core to where they can be at their best and they can be a winning, contending team. It's been a great flip of the script for the Knicks from start of last year to going into this year where they've gone from what is perceived to be one of the worst teams in the league to now being a legit team in the East. Let me know your thoughts on the New York Knicks down below in the comment section and what you think they should prioritize and look to do in this year's NBA offseason. That being said, if you guys did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.